When you hear the words glam rock, who do you think of? David Bowie, obviously. Alice Cooper, sure. What about Elvis? Okay. Elvis didn't wear boas, wigs, top hats, and women's clothing. I was joking. Or am I? Because there was another man in rock and roll who repurposed his style and essence for a new generation of teenagers of the 70s. No, not Bret Michaels. I'm talking about the 70s. Who was that man? Marc Bolan, otherwise known as T-Rex. T-Rex is probably one of the most influential musicians you may have never heard of. And that's really unfortunate because the man was doing some really interesting things in rock and roll. Take the album The Slider, for example. In it resides doo-wop, boogie-woogie, and rockabilly, all behind a dressed-up cock rock facade. If you listen to the major hit off the album, Metal Guru, you see more of what I mean. Sure, it starts off with a scream, but once the drum beat comes in with the backup singers, you can hear the doo-wop repurposed. There's even horns that back everything up, giving it that full 50s band feel. When T-Rex was recording these albums like Electric Warrior and The Slider, he worked with his producer Tony Viscotti to give the guitar a slapback reverb echo effect. Guess who else had a similar guitar sound? If you go back to Elvis's Blue Suede Shoes off his debut, you can hear that same reverby guitar twang. Sure, it isn't as distorted and there isn't any screaming, but the essence is there. You're still not convinced, are you? Well, let's get into the way that Elvis dressed. Sure, he didn't wear brightly colored pants, but he dressed well. Look at that pompadour and tell me it didn't take a long time to get right in the mirror. Just ask someone who has great hair how long it takes to get the style they want to look perfect. Answer: a very long time. Elvis's look was so iconic that many men copied him to look just like him. From the sideburns, the shirt, the jeans, and yes, the pompadour, it became the look of the 50s. Men wanted to be him, and women wanted to be with him. And Marc Bolan was the same way. Sure, he didn't do it the same way, but he came after Elvis, and as a new rock and roll figure to hit the scene, he had to push the envelope. By the 70s, shaking your hips wasn't enough to get you taken off television. But dressing like a woman and humping your guitar on stage? That might get some parents irritated. But it was even deeper than that, because he wasn't just dressing weirdly and behaving strangely. He was doing so with songs that sounded just enough like the 50s, but somehow they weren't. In this way, they're able to subconsciously burrow under the parents of the 50s skins. They would hear the music of T-Rex and say, music used to be better when I was a kid. What kind of mockery is this guy doing with rock and roll music? And props to T-Rex here, because he was doing something that was in fact marketing genius. Turning on the television and seeing T-Rex play would cause parents to tell their kids not to watch it. And guess what makes them want to watch it even more? T-Rex's influence would spread as a result. Girls would scream so loud at his concerts that it became almost impossible to hear him. Again, sound familiar? Just like Beatlemania, it even had a name: T-Rextasy. So what happened to this guy? Why don't we hear about him as much as we do Alice Cooper and David Bowie? Well, unfortunately, T-Rex died young in a car accident. In his short life, he did more by the age of 29 than most people do in a lifetime, releasing 14 studio albums and several great rock and roll hits. His early death didn't stop his impact though. Many musicians still list him as an influence, from The Killers to Oasis to REM. His riffs, his rock and roll style, and his ability to bring the party to the people cement him in the rock and roll pantheon forever. If you've never heard The Slider or Electric Warrior, do yourself a favor and give them both a spin. Out of the two, I like The Slider better for its heavier distortion and its stronger beat, but both give you a great taste into the insight of who this fantastical figure was. Just don't blame me if you get T-Rextasy. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. I can't keep doing this without your help. I hope this helps. I love you all.